Welcome to this session course MS012 Course System and Natural Resources Program Postgraduate Diploma in Sustainability Science. In the last session, we have talked about managing agrobiodiversity, and in that reflected that the importance of policy that play key roles in proper management of agrobiodiversity. So in this session, topic is on policy framework for agrobiodiversity conservation. Right? And the last session we talked about impact of current pattern of agriculture on biodiversity and sustainable use from the point of agricultural based economies, from the point of food and agriculture, and then genetic diversity management and so on. So in this session we are going to focus on policy framework for agricultural agrobiodiversity conservation at the international level in very brief way, and the policy and institution framework for agrobiodiversity conservation with special reference to India, then community-based agrobiodiversity conservation and a case study, scientific development and strategies for agrobiodiversity conservation. So the broad discussion will be on the policy framework that is directly related to protection of plant and genetic resources. When we talk about the policy framework for agrobiodiversity conservation at international level, we know that Convention on Biological Diversity 1992, we call it CBD. It is the very first global agreement on the conservation and sustainable use of biological diversity. And this CBD gained rapid and widespread acceptance, we know that. And today, more than 193 countries have ratified the agreement. The Convention on Biological Diversity, if you look into that document, it has three main objectives, and sometimes we call it as goals. The first one is conservation of biodiversity. The second one is sustainable use of components of biodiversity, and the third one is sharing of benefits arising from the commercial and other utilization of genetic resources in a fair and equitable way. Right. So CBD and other global conventions related to biodiversity assessment and conservation that we have talked in a brief few sessions. Right. So 2010, last 10 years back, at the 10th meeting of Conference of the Parties to the Convention of Biological Diversity in Nagoya, Japan, as we call is Nagoya Protocol. It was adopted in 2010. In this Nagoya Protocol, that was specifically focused on access to genetic resources and the fair and equitable sharing of benefit arising from the utilization to the Convention on Biological Diversity. And that's an international agreement. This Nagoya Protocol aims at sharing the benefit arising from the utilization of genetic resources in a fair and equitable way, including by appropriate access to genetic resources and by appropriate transfer of relevant data, taking into account all the rights over those resources and to technologies, and by appropriate funding, thereby contributing to the conservation of biological diversity and sustainable use of its component. Again, the International Treaty on Plant Genetic Resource for Food and Agriculture, popularly we know it is known as International Seed Treaty. It's a comprehensive international agreement in harmony with the Convention on Biological Diversity. Basic aim of this particular International Seed Treaty is at food security through conservation, exchange and sustainable use of the world's plant genetic resources for food and agriculture, as well as the fair and equitable benefit sharing arising from its use. And that seed treaty also recognizes farmers' right to freely access genetic resources unrestricted by intellectual property rights, to be involved in relevant policy discussion and decision making, and to use, sell and exchange seeds subject to national laws. So the treaty has implemented a multilateral system of access and benefit sharing among those countries that ratified the treaty for a list of approximately 64 some of the most important food and forest crops essential for food security and its interdependence. So I am not talking so much about this in international level, because it is happening. Number of that protocol convention was happening up to 2010 also. Special session related to this international protocol in another section. So coming to policy and institutional framework for agrobiodiversity conservation in India. India has been a signatory to CBD since 18 February 1994 and is one of the first countries to have enacted an appropriate comprehensive legislation to achieve the objective of the convention. And in 2012 also we have hosted COP11, Conference of Party 11 in Hyderabad. We know that COP11 was significant because it marked the 10th anniversary of Johannesburg World Summit on Sustainable Development, 20th anniversary of Bio-Earth and 40th anniversary of Stockholm. From that perspective, it is very much important, and the country is now we hosted that particular that is very important, that COP11 in India. So if you look, during that 2010, several activities have also been organized to mark the celebration of International Year of Biodiversity. We have talked a lot on this topic in another session also. So in India, now our country is very committed to conservation of biodiversity, including agrobiodiversity. This is not only because India's international obligation as a signatory to the Convention on CBD, but because we know India believes that protecting our biodiversity is a critical national priority, as it is linked to our local livelihood of millions of people in the country. Sustainable use of our biodiversity therefore has both ecological and economic values, as we know. So it is with this objective that India has enacted Biological Diversity Act in 2002, and set up a National Biodiversity Authority in 2003, with an explicit mandate of promoting conservation of biological diversity and associated knowledge, as well as facilitating access to them in a sustainable manner. This Biological Diversity Act 2002 that was passed on December 11, 2002 came into force on February 5, 2003, followed by formation of its rule in 2004. Biological Diversity Act 2002 provide necessary statutory and administrative mechanism at the national, state and local body levels to realize the objective of the Act as well as Convention of Biological Diversity. We have three-tiered system of regulation that is in vices under the Biodiversity Act, Biological Diversity Act, that consists of the National Biodiversity Authority at the apex level. At the state level, we have Biodiversity Board or State Biodiversity Board, right? At the local level, we have Biodiversity Management Committee. And if you look into Section 37 of the Biological Diversity Act, it deals with identification of biodiversity heritage site in the country. So the state government, in consultation with nodal bodies, they are supposed to notify the important areas of biodiversity as biodiversity heritage sites. Further, notification and framing of rules of managing and conserving biodiversity heritage sites have to be harmonized with the Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers' Rights Act 2001. That has a provision for utilization of ZIN fund, particularly in those areas identified as agrobiodiversity hotspot according to Rule 70 of Coast 2. Right. However, if you look into the approaches for identification and conservation, then these approaches are lacking, and therefore there is a need to develop indices for identification of this valuable component of biodiversity, which are important for food, fodder and nutritional security. So in addition to the identification, there is also a need for their characterization and value assessment to facilitate their promotion and use in evolving sustainable agriculture. We know that India has a large number of scientific personnel and important network of scientific institutions in public, private and NGO sectors that are playing a significant role in assessment and conservation of biodiversity, including agrobiodiversity of our country. Some of the major institutions are, Indian Council of Agricultural Research, Botanical Survey of India, Zoological Survey of India, Wildlife Institute of India, Fisheries Surveys of India, Forest Survey of India, Council of Scientific Industrial Research, Department of Biotechnology, Department of Science Technology, and so on. So we also have National Bureau on Plant, Animal, Fish, Insects, then microbes and forest genetic resources. They are specifically mandated for management of genetic resources. In addition to these, we have all India coordinated different projects on taxonomy and network. on honeybee and pollinators, on that ornithology, and that play an important role in developing capacity building and research. The Indian Council of Agriculture Research, ICR is an autonomous organization under the Department of Agriculture, Research and Education, Ministry of Agriculture, Government of India. The Council is the apex body of coordination, guiding and managing research and education, agriculture, including horticulture, fisheries, and animal science in the entire country. It has approximately about 99 ICR Institute, 53 agriculture universities spread across the country. And this is one of the largest national agricultural system in the world. So under the aegis of ICR, we have 5 bureaus who are working in different aspects of agrobiodiversity. They are on plant genetic resources, animal genetic resources, fish genetic resources, agriculturally important microorganisms, and agriculturally important insects. We know that our renowned agricultural scientist, father of green revolution in India, Professor M.S. Swaminathan, he strongly proposed to bring all this bureau on a single platform of effective management of agrobiodiversity in the country, and also emphasized that the need of strengthening the infrastructure of ICR suggested establishment of Gene seed bank in all 128 agroclimatic zones of the country. The Indian National Gene Bank that is established by the Indian Council of Agricultural Research is also part of the National Bureau of Plant Genetic Research. It has conserved more than 150,000 accessions and samples. The capacity of this gene bank has been increased to about 1 million, making it the largest gene bank of the world. It has more than 71,000 accessions of underutilized crops. A range of crops like millets, oilseeds, vegetables, and pulses, narcotics have been maintained for several years in liquid nitrogen without any decline in their viability. Recently, we have several organizations that they collectively called non-government organizations, ship saver exchange, industries, and so on, and that have played an important role in supporting and expanding local efforts on global biodiversity conservation. In many cases, they are directly linked with traditional farmers with access to conservation program like ship saver exchange. And this ship saver exchange particular, such kind of this program conserves and exchanges over 5,000 native varieties. Access to conservation of crops like sugarcane, rubber, oil palm, pineapple, etc. is also done by different industries. Farmers also help in access to conservation of forest trees and fruit trees through practice of agroforestry, and which is now when we talk about agroforestry, it is facilitated and encouraged by International Center for Research on Agroforestry, right? So in order to honor the farmers who have conserved the germplasm of crop plants, the Genome Survival Award has also been set up by Indian government. So to ensure the fair and equitable sharing of benefit arising out of the use of genetic resources, India has taken significant legislative measures and also integrated all our conservation principle in various policies and programs. Like we have Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers' Rights Act 2001 and Rules 2003 that deals primarily with the protection of plant breeder rights over the new varieties developed. The second and third amendment to the Patent Act 1970 also provide for mandatory disclosure in the patent application of resources or sources and geographical origins or biological material used in invention. Right? National Innovation Foundation, which is one of the autonomous society established in 2000, it's established for recognizing, respecting, rewarding innovation and outstanding traditional knowledge at grassroots level. We know that India has rich traditional knowledge about the medicinal values of plants, natural products which have been used by people since time immemorial. So we need to document all this knowledge. So documentation of this existing knowledge is available in public domain on various traditional system of medicine that has become imperative for us to safeguard the sovereignty of this traditional knowledge and to protect it from being misappropriated in the form of patent or non-agricultural, non-original that innovation, and which has been a matter of our national concern. So in 1999, Department of Ayush, Yoga and Naturopathy, Unani, Shida and Homeopathy, Ayush World and the scientific the CSI constituted an interdisciplinary task force for creating an approach paper on establishing a traditional knowledge digital library, which is an effective deterrent to biopiracy. And India also has set up a global biopiracy watch system under traditional knowledge digitalization and the digital library, and in respect of patent application related to Indian system of mediation. In coming to the community-based agrobiodiversity conservation, there is a big contribution by MS Swaminathan Research Foundation. Right, this is a foundation that is founded by Professor M.S. Swaminathan that further bring evolution in India. This foundation play an important roles in conservation of agrobiodiversity in its livelihood across the southern part of the country, and then many rural communities and then especially their major focus is on different tribal groups. They follow on-farm the conservation because it assures higher importance in the context of global climate change. It's since if you look into what are some of the major initiatives done by this one of the important private organization founded by Professor Swaminathan, is that since its inception they have been undertaking and advocating agrobiodiversity conservation with emphasis on community participatory on-farm approach along with access to conservation. So this has been focusing at three important agrobiodiversity rich eastern and western Ghats in India. One is in Jaipur tract of Odisha, Koli hills of Tamil Nadu, and the Wayanad, Kerala. So in Jaipur tract, which is known as the major center of rice genetic diversity, and Koli hills is notable for small diversity, and Wayanad has large medicinal plant diversity. So the first two means Koli hills and Jaipur tract location fall within Eastern Ghats and last within the Western Ghats. So in India, we know that in situ and ex situ conservation system of conservation have conventionally been studied and regulated from the point of view of scientific foresters. So in order to promote the role of local community in situ on-farm conservation of agrobiodiversity, MS Swaminathan Research Foundation has set up Community Agrobiodiversity Center at Kalpetta and Wayanad. So this region have larger tribal population engaged in traditional conservation, is also known for wealth of traditional knowledge. For example, special rice varieties like Anjabhara, which are used in Ayurveda, a popular Indian traditional medicine. While MSSRF work on-farm conservation that was started in 1989, the ex situ conservation was added in 1994 with establishment of communities in Bank under GT Skarsia Mognoza Community Genetic Resource Center. Under this SMCGRC that follows integrated conservation with on-farm and ex situ communities in bank activities as well as empowerment rural youth, school children and rural women and the men in documenting and conserving local agrobiodiversity using field level with the help of agrobiodiversity conservation course, school level genome club and village level gene seed grand banks in hub and spokes model. This CGB means community gene bank also imparts them legal and genetic literacy associated with conservation, access and benefits sharing. Right. Coming to the scientific development strategies for agrobiodiversity conservation, we have a number of developments in biodiversity sciences, and it gives or it provides solution to current pattern of agrobiodiversity laws and agrobiodiversity laws and ways to conserve it. For example, if you look into the genomic structure of several major crop species in the world, relatives, you have seen their are being described very well, and this also provides a wealth of information and analysis that can be used for describing biodiversity at genetic level and its use in crop production. So recent agronomic research, most of the economic research, they also emphasize that system analysis to show that the benefits of biodiversity best practices such as cover crops, intercrops, rotations, and hedge crops for agricultural productivity, environment, and quality. Right. Then, if you look from that ecological research has shown that greater number of species result in higher productivity of grassland ecosystem, which is relevant not only for pasture but for other types of agriculture. Using that satellite imaging system, the distribution of ecosystem and agricultural landscape now can be described with high resolution, yielding information how to better manage agricultural species, invasive and wild species. So there are a number of new efforts. They are merged with biological and economic approaches, and also generating information on how policy can affect conservation use of agrobiodiversity while keeping costs as low as possible. This requires an approach that goes far beyond the conservation strategies. For example, the ex-situ conservation of seeds, we know that involves storage in a refrigerated bank or botanical garden. It is essential, but does not go nearly far enough. We are not going. What is needed for our broader and better integrated conservation scheme that rely primarily on in situ concepts. The in situ concept of the conservation and breeding of genetic resources by farmers and farming communities on their farms and in their villages. So farmers have been doing this for thousands of years, right? We need to appreciate this and we need to recognize this. So gene banks can complement their work but cannot replace it. Right. When we talk about ex-situ conservation, we talk about gene bank. So the gene bank can complement farmers' work but cannot replace it. So in situ schemes, this will enable the use of conservation of genetic resources to be closely linked. Now, if you look into the true slogan of this, this conservation is in situ conservation. Use it or lose it. So plant species or animal species should be used by neighbor wherever possible. They should contribute to securing rural livelihood and form a part of rural culture. So if I summarize what we have studied today is that in this session is that we have talked about different policy at different levels. Especially we have a quick look into and very minute we talk about a policy framework for agrobiodiversity conservation international level. We have looked into that India's initiative in conservation of agrobiodiversity in terms of policy and institutional framework, and we have a quick look into one of the renowned research foundation, MS Swaminathan Research Foundation, their activities, their role in agrobiodiversity conservation in India is a case study in Indian context by non-governmental organization, and our scientific development strategies for agrobiodiversity conservation. Thank you very much.